Gary experiencing a 180-degree difference between Castlemont first semester English teacher Larry Darlingett and second semester English teacher Marion Petrai. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. Sir Walter Scott assertiveness didn't have high school studies or homework in mind when he penned the famous quote. The circumstance that occurred in the second semester weren't drafted as a plot to deceive, but more of a happenstance, because deception is planned and calculated, or so thought the 15-year-old Castlemont High student. A convenience was a more descriptive designation of why this had transpired. With high school studies, assigned homework, the pursuit of employment, a growing list of priorities confronted him. This event made Gary realizing it was time to organize his activities. Mr. Darling's English class, besides being his first period in homeroom, was unlike any class the young man had yet experienced. Mr. Darling was also Castlemont's drama instructor, his classroom being a stage and the students all having walk-on parts. The instructor was very demonstrative in class subject matter and presentations. One could find the same small elite group of students participating in class discussion and response. Gary having a suspicion they were all auditioning for future drama parts. The English assignments were always brief, involving little or no homework. The teen attributing the assignment leniency to Mr. Darling's overwhelming commitment to the drama department. Gary's optimism concerning Mr. Darling's class was not underestimated. It was more of a drama class, with readings of literature and actual drama enactments, rather than productive English grammar instruction, all to the delight of the students. The second semester of English discovering Mrs. Petrai class a totally different portrayal of studies. Gary having noted from his friends Hank and Don about the reputable Mrs. Petrai and this very thick, boring, classic literature novel assigned as required reading and discussion for her class. When handed the book, Gary was astonished. A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens, the classic that frequented Mrs. Funnell's bookcase in his 9th grade Frick Junior High Latin class. Gary, during Latin studies, having taken the liberty to borrow and read Two Cities and David Copperfield, which also was occupying the bookcase next to his desk during that final semester of Latin. Mrs. Petrai was disciplined about the reading. Every student required to submit a list of prospective books to read, and submit at least 2 book reports for each report card period from their list. Gary, being an avid reader, concluding the English class requirement wouldn't be a problem, but soon discovering other studies occupying a good portion of his school evening homework time, and with weekend activities, he found he had the desire but not the time to readily explore the world of literature as before. The youth was normally punctual with his book report assignments, but on this occasion overlooking an assignment due date, discovering he failed to finish the book, let alone write a book report for Mrs. Petrai's class which was due in the morning. This the first time, but not the last, that he would call upon innovation to prevail, to tender and turn in a synopsis of a novel to the 10th grade English teacher on the due date for grading. It was only later when Mrs. Petrai approached Gary, addressing him about scheduling a conference. The day arriving, Gary entering the vacant English class, trying to conceal a look of consternation as he approached, but it was futile. He could discern from her expression, his well-disguised work of convenience, writing a book reports on non-existent books, was finally exposed. She was subtle, complimenting him on his well-written book reports, and then the subject turned detrimental. She revealed, while grading students' book reports, she would sometimes find interest in a novel and a desire to read it, but discovering the last book Gary had written about was not to be found, adding that even with continued research, to the point of inquiring at Oakland's main downtown library, was to no avail. She confirmed what Gary suspected, having discovered some of his book reports were fictitious. Gary's literary documentation was always very inclusive, listing the publisher, copyright, and revision dates, author. But there was a truism. The arresting storyline always regarded something the aspiring author desired to pen in the future. Mrs. Petra's admonition was stern, but a commiseration filtered through, complimenting on his captive pretense, but giving no quarter to his endeavor. The teen was not consumed by the discovery, discerning this would be his final high school English class, an enrollment in an alternative journalism class and the school newspaper, where a belletristic talent would be welcomed. Gary reasoned, Sir Walter Scott was correct, deception can be self-inflicting.